The subject of people deconverting from Christianity, typically to atheism, but sometimes it involves conversion to a form of polytheism, has, at this point, pretty much been beaten into the ground. We have videos from The Friendly Atheist, Godless Cranium, and Pine Creek doing wonderful, in-depth videos on why the general church-going public leaves Christianity, and profound personal stories from people like Kalita Salia, The Philosophical Misfit, Let's Discuss with Eliza, and a host of other examples. But we find less coverage of the everyday person leaving their religion than we do of the big names, and that has to do with a person's reach. We've seen familiar names like Anne Rice, Anne Hathaway, and Orlando Bloom either publicly speak out against Christianity or in favor of and associate themselves with a different religion, because, Orlando Bloom is a Buddhist. What about when you hear names like Josh Harris, Megan Phelps-Roper, or John Steingard? Of course, if you're familiar with these names, it's probably because you've heard their own deconversion stories at one point or another. How do we differentiate between leaving Christianity as an everyday person and leaving Christianity as someone who has been involved with the religion for a long time? Potentially, and in some cases definitely, having done harm. If you don't recognize the name Josh Harris right off the bat, you're probably just out of the age range that I'm in. Harris, a former evangelical pastor and the author of I Kissed Dating Goodbye, wrote his first book, which centers around Harris's dislike for and eventual self-removal from the traditional dating scene, at the age of 21. The book has been criticized for supporting many of the same patriarchal ideals of Christianity. The concepts of women as property or a prize to be won, benevolent sexism, which treats women as though they are in need of protection due to their perceived weakness, and, as found in a good majority of the Christian dating books mostly marketed to women, strong feelings of shame having to do with any sort of natural biological urges that most humans feel on a regular basis, just to name a few. These concepts, and more, were so prominent in I Kissed Dating Goodbye that they can do, and have done, real psychological damage to those who read the book, and Harris's other books, and attempt to apply the suggestions as hard and fast rules for how to live their dating lives, as it feeds straight into the destructive concept of purity culture. I Kissed Dating Goodbye has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. After I Kissed Dating Goodbye, Harris went on to either write or co-write Boy Meets Girl, Say Hello to Courtship, Not Even a Hint, or Sex Isn't the Problem, Lust Is, Stop Dating the Church, or Why Church Matters, Discovering Your Place in the Family of God, Dug Down Deep, and Humble Orthodoxy, Holding the Truth High Without Putting People Down. No word on if the other books did quite the damage that was done by I Kissed Dating Goodbye, but in July 2016, Harris took part in an interview with NPR where he went into detail about hearing from people who had been damaged by the principles and philosophies promoted in the book. Harris said, quote, "I think I'm finally at a place where I'm really trying to listen to those voices. And I think it's taken time for the consequences of the way that people applied the book and the way the book affected people to play out. And so I'm hearing these different voices saying, here's how your book was used against me, here's how it was forced on me, or here's how I tried to. No one forced it on me, but I tried to apply it and it had this negative consequence in different ways. I'm trying to go back and really evaluate, where did my book contribute to that? Where was it too stringent? And where was that me and what I was writing, and where was that, the families and the church cultures and so on? So I feel like I'm on the front end of a process to help people in some way, if I can apologize where needed and reevaluate where needed." 3 years later, almost to the day, Harris revealed in an Instagram post that he and his wife of over 20 years, Shannon, were separating. He thanked his followers for their understanding and respect for their privacy, quote, during a difficult time. 9 days later, Harris posted a longer message to his followers with an even more serious subject. The Instagram post reads, "The information that was left out of our announcement is that I've undergone a massive shift in my regard to my faith in Jesus. The popular phrase for this is deconstruction. The biblical phrase is falling away. By all the measurements that I have for defining a Christian, I am not a Christian. Many people tell me that there is a different way to practice faith, and I want to remain open to this, but I'm not there now." The comments went wild. As of May 27th, the most recent comment was from 4 weeks ago from user Tony Fierce 2020. "When you deny the Father and Son, it's the Antichrist." Oh, but they get better. From user Antonio Lewis in, some passive-aggressive encouragement. "But I have hope someday you'll find the way back to home. My pray it's asking to God mercy for you and to let you back, and I know our lovely Father is waiting for you return to the only and shining true." Sick, of course. And from user Rhoda Fasanmi, something more aggressive than passive-aggressive. "I pray you actually find your way back before it is too late, because according to the Bible, the words you know and all the books you have written will surely stand against you on the judgment day." Harris's Instagram is linked in the description below. Thankfully, not all of the comments were so destructive. There were messages of encouragement, support, and most of all, messages of empathy from people who had been in a similar position. Harris, in his deconversion process, first had to come to the realization that his words, whether in print or in person, had done people actual harm. He has since rebranded his Facebook page to focus on the changes he has made and is making in his life. And while he hasn't completely been able to let go of some of his previous thought patterns, there is a marked difference between the Josh Harris of I Kiss Dating Goodbye and the Josh Harris of today. This next section has some mentions of some potentially triggering topics and phrases, so if you find that you are unable to handle this, please feel free to skip to the final section. Next, we have the example of Megan Phelps-Roper. As is evidenced by her name, Phelps-Roper was brought into the spotlight as the former spokesperson for the Westboro Baptist Church. You know, the church that protests outside of soldiers' funerals, churches they don't agree with, and even random public events with the anti-LGBTQ+ signs. As the granddaughter of Fred Phelps, Phelps-Roper began participating in Westboro's protests at just 5 years old, before she was even able to read the hateful messages on signs she carried, like "God hates America," "Your pastor is a whore," and many that are even worse. In her memoir Unfollow, and a subsequent interview with Michelle Martin aired on PBS in 2019, Phelps-Roper detailed the physical and emotional abuse that she and others suffered as children in the Westboro Baptist Church, saying of the church's strict set of so-called morals and its intolerant beliefs, quote, "As a child, it is physically beaten into you," which other members of the Phelps family who have since left Westboro have corroborated. As she grew up, Phelps-Roper became the church's official spokesperson on Twitter. Her main focus, public criticism of homosexuality and the general acceptance of it. Even tweeting "Thank God for AIDS" on World AIDS Day in 2009. She even made appearances with her family on The Howard Stern Show and worked at her family's law firm after graduating from Washburn University. Phelps-Roper said in her PBS interview that her grandfather required all of his children and their spouses to go to law school. In her personal time, her own Twitter confrontations with people had to do with the Jewish faith and its members, and became involved in both philosophical and scriptural debates. When Harmon Leon of The Observer speaks of his first encounter with Phelps-Roper in an April 2019 article, Leon says, quote, "What really perplexed me when I first met the Westboro Baptist Church was, despite doing some of the most heinous acts in the world, such as picketing soldiers' funerals, their home life felt almost wholesome, like something plucked right out of the Brady Bunch." The Phelps family genuinely felt like they were serving God and helping further His word and mission, and still feel that way today. In her Twitter debates with members of the Jewish faith, Phelps-Roper began to question Westboro's teachings and dogma, and credits her eventual exit from the church and deconversion to those debates. In her interactions with users, She turned to the Bible that she knew and loved to make an attempt at justifying her arguments about her faith and its doctrine. At the same time, shakeups were occurring in the church, which eventually led Phelps-Roper to contemplate leaving, beginning in July 2012. As she spent the summer and fall racking her brain over the cognitive dissonance she was now having to come to terms with, she still picketed with the church but avoided reporters, and actually stopped tweeting altogether. Everything came to a head in November of that year, when Megan Phelps-Roper and her younger sister Grace left their parents' house and moved in with a high school teacher that had taught both of them. To this day, Phelps-Roper cites Twitter as being a big reason why she worked up the courage to leave the Westboro Baptist Church. In the days when Twitter only allowed for 140 characters, it left little room for mudslinging if you ever wanted to get to the heart of your argument. In the Observer article, Phelps-Roper says of the challenge of her seemingly set-in-stone ideas by those she interacted with, quote, "The church's failure to address those inconsistencies. That's what gave me the little bit of confidence in my own thinking, the idea that the church could be wrong about something." Unsurprisingly, with the exception of other family members who have also left the church, the entirety of Phelps-Roper's family has cut ties with her. But while she lacks that presence, she has filled her life with activism and speaking out in favor of love and tolerance. She aligns herself with those she used to rally against and seems to work every single day to live a better life. Finally, we've got the most recent of the deconversions, John Steingard of the band Hawk Nelson. Joining the band in 2004, Steingard was also responsible for side projects Fox Run and September Satellite. Steingard grew up as a pastor's kid, with a family completely immersed in their faith. As a musician, he played alongside some of the biggest names in Christian music, but always seemed humbled by doing so. Steingard is, basically, what society would deem to be one of the good ones. Based on his previous vlogs posted on his YouTube channel, Steingard seems like a grounded, down-to-earth guy. So, it makes sense that he would go through a deconversion. Steingard posted on Instagram back all of 9 days ago a heartfelt letter to his fans about his decision to leave the faith. Quote, "I've been terrified to post this for a while, but I feel like it's time for me to be honest. After growing up in a Christian home, being a pastor's kid, playing and singing in a Christian band, and having the word Christian in front of most of the things in my life, I am finding that I no longer believe in God." Steingard went on to talk about the doubts he had been dealing with for a while, and his fear of even making the Instagram post in the first place. His fear, he said, was mostly based on all that I thought I would lose. He cites his inability to live dishonestly any further as his reasoning for coming out as an agnostic now, which, in my opinion, takes a lot of strength, especially when you have been in the public as a Christian anything for so long. Steingard further goes on to talk about a conversation that took place with his father-in-law, a pastor, much like Steingard's own father, where they spoke about some of the antiquated views of women and their place in the world that are contained within the Bible. Quote, "To me, that seemed less like the message of the loving God that most Christians believe in now, and more like the ideas that would have been present in the culture at the time. A male-dominated society where women were treated less like equals and more like property." His study into the book he once revered ended up chipping away at and ultimately becoming responsible for his decision. Steingard went through a brief period of grief and depression upon coming to the realization that he no longer believed. But according to an article in USA Today, he has since emerged from that dark place now, because I've discovered that life really does go on. His fellow bandmates and other Christian musicians have been widely supportive. Matt Hammett, the former lead singer from Sanctus Real, a band that I admittedly was obsessed with when I was about 15 to 16 years old, told Steingard that he has nothing but love. And Mike Donahue, singer for the band 10th Avenue North, offered his company anytime Steingard wanted to talk. Overall, Steingard's outlook seems to be positive, and he's gotten a lot of support from fans and fellow musicians. No word on how his extended family is taking it, but we definitely wish him all the best. So, What can we glean from these formerly Christian influencers? That life is hard and we should feel sorry for them? Of course not. We can take a page out of Jesus' book and meet them with love and understanding instead of mockery and hate. I mean, that's one of the few positive things we can get out of the Bible anyway. Thanks for watching. Take a moment to like and subscribe, and hit that bell to get our notifications. See you next time.